Dennis, we'll start there on the issue of the Labor voter. Now forecast at least 40% of those who say they vote Labor set to stare the PM down and reject his voice. Some, you have seen that there in the package, say, well, it's, they don't want to racially divide Australia. We know a lot of that Labor vote, of course, are migrants. They came here to Australia for its equality. They don't want to become second-class citizens. Some say it's because these voters are angry the government appears to be distracted on the issues that are really front of mind for them. Cost of living, of course, high on the list there. What's your thoughts?
Well, Peter, I think that certainly people are concerned about the cost of living. That remains the top issue. There's no doubt about that at all. I think, though, that when it comes to voting for the referendum, people are demonstrating that they are thinking about it and they're going to vote on that issue. I think there'll be a debt later for Labor if the yes vote fails, and it will be punished for being seen to be distracted by the referendum away from cost of living. But I think that actually the referendum question is the thing that has people concerned. And look, the idea that we didn't get bipartisanship, so that's down the drain at the beginning. And secondly, we've got to remember on these sorts of issues, people don't vote on partisan lines. Look at the same-sex marriage plebiscite. There are a huge number of Labor electorates in Western Sydney where the vote was against same-sex marriage. They were Labor voters in safe Labor seats, and they voted against the same-sex plebiscite. Now, I think that this is what is happening here. And remember, this is a simple result. At the moment, it looks like 60%, and that includes, a lot of Labor voters voting against it. And so I think that when you look at the fact that Labor's primary support at the election only 18 months ago was only just over 30%, you have to have Labor voters voting against the referendum in large numbers to get the indicated level of support in the polls for the no vote. I think that people don't like the idea regardless of their political persuasion.
Yeah, look, I agree with that. I think that he is treating the electorate like mugs here. This idea that there's a misinformation that's turning their vote away from his voice. I think it's lack of detail from the PM. I think it's the PM's strategy. I think it's the yes camp strategy that's at fault here. All of those things are buying into it. But, he's got the biggest megaphone in the country. And there are, 5-1. Millions are going to the yes camp compared to the no camp. They couldn't have a more win-assisted run. The fact that they are doing so badly, I think this goes a lot to the PM's judgment from day one not to have a constitutional convention, not to do this in the orthodox way. If the results are no vote on Sunday the 15th of October, what responsibility, Dennis, is he going to have to bear in all of this?
Well, I think he has to bear the majority of the responsibility if it fails, and he also has to bear responsibility for division in the community during the debate on the referendum. There is no doubt about that. This is his idea. Certainly, several Indigenous leaders indicated early on that this is what they wanted. This was the model they wanted. And yet one of those architects himself, Noel Pearson, said that it was necessary for bipartisan model to actually get it through a constitutional amendment. This was recognised by one of the architects of the voice model, and yet Anthony Albanese has failed to do that by ignoring all of the traditional methods to ensure that you actually persuade the people how to vote. You actually convince them of the strength of the argument. And I think this is, again, this is demonstrated by the fact that Labor voters are turning against it because they don't like the arguments. They are not being told enough. And the Prime Minister is saying, he's now turning negative. He's saying, I want to be positive, but look, if we don't get the voice through, we'll just have all the same. In other words, he is saying we will continue to have a complete disaster in some remote Indigenous communities and life measurements for Indigenous Australians, because why? He's not going to do anything more. He's not going to do, is the voice the only answer? And I think this is a part of his problem here in the final 2 weeks, is he looks to be saying, well, we're not going to do anything else. If you don't give us the voice, we're just going to carry on the same. Well, that's not what the leader should be doing. And I think that there is a sign here of a very negative tone coming in, saying that people, if they vote no, will endanger the future of Indigenous Australians even further.
That is a very good point to make, because if it does go down, sort of numbers we're seeing in the polls, 60-40, he's then saying to 60% of Australians, who many have thought deeply about this issue, to turn their mind to a no vote. He's sort of saying to them, you are responsible then for everything that happens from here on in negative terms to Indigenous people. If the stats don't move, it's your fault. Not my fault, the government, not because I haven't done the right thing by arguing for the voice and put the detail on the table. That's a risky strategy. Just quickly, the RBA will meet tomorrow. This will be Michelle Bullock's first meeting. Someone who formerly very senior in the RBA, Jonathan Kearns, head of domestic markets in the past, he's come out and said, look, we're flying blind at the RBA when we go to make some of these decisions. He's looked at a whole lot of things that are feeding into inflation. He notes high oil prices. They have surged 12% since late August. All of this is putting upward pressure on rates, as you know, well, on inflation, but by extension, that means rates. What do you think we're going to see tomorrow, Dennis?
Well, I would think that we will see, and I would certainly hope we will see, that the Reserve Bank Board will make a decision in keeping with the numbers in front of it and the advice it receives and considers. I think that there's a danger here of a real politicisation of the Reserve Bank, where they think and try and double guess what the impact will be. They simply have to make the decision on the numbers. And we will see the minutes of the meeting later, so we'll actually know what is discussed eventually. And so I think that the idea of the unions and various people, business, putting pressure on the Reserve Bank not to put up rates or to put up rates is wrong, because what they have to do is make a decision, as the Reserve Bank has done previously. Yes, they've made mistakes previously, but it has not been about a political consideration. It's been based on the facts. And I would hope and expect and believe that's what we'll see from the Reserve Bank meeting tomorrow.
Right, we will get into all of that tomorrow night when we get that result. Dennis Shanahan, thank you for your time.